Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
She entered past midnight, disheveled but poised. "Sorry, Louis. A late diplomatic meeting," she said. He almost believed her until he noticed the lipstick stained too high to be hers. Days later, he found the note, captivating as always. "Our next meeting must remain discreet. Warren." His heart sank. Who was Warren? A foreign delegate, or something far worse? Sleepless nights led to quiet surveillance, revealing not just betrayal of their marriage, but of the nation itself. And when he confronted her hidden world, the lines between love, espionage, and revenge blurred. This wasn't just an affair, it was treason. Chapter 1. A light drizzle fell over Washington, D.C. on a late autumn evening. The stark white columns of government buildings shone under streetlights, reflecting on puddles along the sidewalk. Just past 7 p.m., Louis hustled out of a black SUV in front of a modest brownstone, a building that housed a specialized Pentagon cybersecurity unit branch. He was a middle-aged specialist with short-cropped hair, a lean build, and sharp eyes that spoke of countless hours poring over encrypted data. Tonight, he was covering a last-minute shift to troubleshoot a potential breach in the Department of Defense's network. For Louis, the day had been normal until late afternoon, when a high-priority alarm sounded at his office, prompting him to rush back after dinner. It was typical in the life of a Pentagon cybersecurity expert: unexpected calls, high-stakes software checks, near-obsessive vigilance against foreign infiltration attempts. Meanwhile, his wife Cecilia was at home. Or so Louis thought. She was a diplomatic liaison known for bridging conversations between U.S. officials and various foreign dignitaries. Over the years, she had attended a whirlwind of international summits, closed-door banquets, and hush-hush cocktail hours. Louis always admired her capacity for networking, her ability to ease tension among rival states, and how easily she navigated the intricacies of diplomatic courtesy. The last time Louis spoke to Cecilia that evening was around 6 p.m. She'd mentioned some routine follow-up calls with a foreign embassy, adding that she planned to stay home, review files, and wait up for him. A typical night for now. By the time Louis returned to the house near Capitol Hill, a stately two-story with classic Georgetown architecture, he noticed the lights were off, except for a faint glow in the living room. He stepped inside, calling softly, "Cecilia, I'm back." Silence. A quick glance around revealed no one. Odd. She mentioned she'd be there. He headed upstairs. The bedroom remained empty, bed untouched. In her private study, documents about bilateral trade agreements were spread across her desk. The laptop sat open but locked. He checked the clock. 10:30 p.m. She'd said she wasn't going out tonight. Perhaps something urgent at the embassy? A mild concern brewed in Louis's gut. He dialed her phone. No answer. Texted, "Everything okay?" No reply. He set the phone aside, attributing it to unforeseen diplomatic errands that sometimes popped up. But deep down, a subtle disquiet took hold. Cecilia typically left a note, or at least texted back. 2 hours later, nearing midnight, still no sign of Cecilia. Louis found himself drifting through half-sleep on the living room couch, phone in hand, mentally listing potential reasons for her absence. Last-minute embassy dinner, sudden flight arrival of a foreign dignitary, an off-record meeting with politicians. All were possible. Yet she usually kept him informed. When the front door creaked open at 12:50 a.m., he sprang up. Cecilia entered poised, hair slightly disheveled, wearing an elegant black blazer with matching skirt. She seemed startled to see him waiting in the dimly lit corridor. "Louis, you're still up?" "Sorry. I had a late diplomatic engagement. Some delegates from Central Europe insisted on further talks. I left my phone in the car so I couldn't respond, she explained in a calm, steady voice. His tense shoulders relaxed somewhat, but a fleeting detail caught his eye. A faint smudge of lipstick on her collar, too high to be her own. Possibly from brushing cheeks with an ambassador's spouse or a colleague's handshake. Still, it struck him as odd. He let it go for the moment, giving her a gentle hug. She stiffened slightly, then apologized again for the late hour. They parted for bed with minimal conversation. Days passed. The lipstick smudge quickly faded from memory, overshadowed by hectic schedules. But new anomalies arose. Cecilia began leaving earlier in the mornings, returning home unpredictably late, citing the demands of unprecedented foreign negotiations. She seemed more guarded with her phone, placing it face down, stepping out of earshot for certain calls. One evening, Lewis overheard a snippet of her phone conversation in the hallway. "Yes. Dinner was divine. We'll meet soon, but keep it quiet." He recognized none of the usual code words for official diplomatic tasks. Before he could question her, she ended the call abruptly. Little by little, a quiet wedge formed. Previously, they had shared a sense of mutual respect for each other's professional secrecy, but now, Louis felt an unsettling distance. As a Pentagon cybersecurity operative, he was trained to detect subtle changes in behavior. His instincts whispered that something more than routine diplomacy was at play. Perhaps a flirtation with a foreign contact, but that was purely speculation. Or so he told himself. One Friday afternoon, while tidying up the living room, Louis discovered Cecilia's navy blue messenger bag tucked behind a sofa cushion. He recognized it as her embassy kit, typically containing briefing papers or foreign language notes. Curiosity piqued, he gently lifted the flap. Inside, among typical documents, he found a small folded envelope labeled with a single letter. W. Strange. It wasn't an official State Department letter. The stationery was an embossed crest he didn't recognize. Conflicted, Louis debated whether to open it. As a husband, he loathed snooping. As a security professional, he understood infiltration can often hide in plain sight. After a minute's hesitation, he carefully slid out the note. In refined script, it read, "You were captivating last night. Thank you for the conversation and the trust. Our next meeting must remain discreet. I anticipate your text. Warren." Lewis's blood ran cold. This letter sounded personal, not a routine diplomatic exchange. He carefully replaced it as he found it, fearful of alerting Cecilia that he'd snooped. But the name Warren was new to him, or at least not in the usual circles. Could be a foreign contact, possibly an envoy from an allied nation. Yet the intimate tone implied something more, something that spelled betrayal. He spent the rest of the day in silent turmoil. Was this a fling? Or was it an official contact that only sounded personal? Her job did involve delicate alliances, after all. Still, the word captivating lingered in his mind like a thorn. He decided to proceed cautiously. Jumping to conclusions could be disastrous if he misread the situation, but it demanded vigilance. Chapter 2. Monday morning found Lewis already on edge, spurred by the note from Warren. He planned to keep a closer watch on Cecilia's comings and goings. If something illicit was transpiring, be it personal or professional, he aimed to uncover the truth swiftly. One of Lewis's roles at the Pentagon's cybersecurity unit was maintaining secure internal networks. He had clearance for specialized surveillance, though typically used only under official protocols. But now a personal dilemma overshadowed him. How to investigate his own wife's behavior without stepping over ethical and legal boundaries. As Louis scanned an embassy's firewall logs, part of a standard check for foreign infiltration, he noticed an unrecognized device repeatedly connecting to a secure, high-level channel within the foreign embassy of a certain Eastern European country. The device used credentials assigned to C. Johnson, which matched the name Cecilia Johnson. Strange. She specialized in Western European diplomacy, not the Eastern Bloc. Additionally, the times of these connections correlated suspiciously with her late-night absences. Curiosity flamed. Could she be accessing the embassy's system for legitimate reasons? Possibly, but no official request had come from her department to the Pentagon. Another red flag. That evening, as Cecilia arrived home with the same rehearsed excuses, diplomatic dinner went overtime. The ambassador's spouse insisted I stay. Louis faked a tired smile and offered a simple, "Sure, I understand." Inside, however, his mind whirred with questions. If he confronted her too soon, she might cover her tracks or feed him half-truths. Meanwhile, any actual infiltration could slip deeper underground. He decided to take a more methodical approach. He would watch, gather proof, confirm any wrongdoing, then decide how to proceed. If it were an affair, the heartbreak would be personal. If it were espionage, the betrayal could be national in scale and cost them both dearly. Days later, Louis feigned a night shift, but actually staked out their driveway from an inconspicuous black sedan, courtesy of a friend in the CIA. His contact was Stanley, a mutual acquaintance who owed him a favor. Under normal circumstances, a CIA operative wouldn't engage in personal vendettas. But Stanley recognized potential national security concerns if a top-tier diplomatic liaison was consorting with suspicious individuals. Around 8 p.m., Cecilia left the house in a sleek business suit. She got into her own sedan and drove off. Louis followed at a safe distance. She headed downtown, past the usual government district, eventually stopping near a high-end Michelin-starred restaurant on the outskirts of Georgetown, renowned for hosting hush-hush political and foreign delegations. Louis parked discreetly. Through tinted windows, he observed Cecilia greet a tall man in a charcoal suit. The two shared a warm hug far more intimate than a polite handshake. They stepped inside. Heart pounding, Louis stayed in the car, taking photos with a zoom lens. The man's face was partially obscured by a scarf and the restaurant's dim exterior lighting. But from Louis's vantage, he recognized certain features. Slender build, angular jaw, maybe in his early 40s. Could this be Warren? The couple lingered inside for 2 hours. Eventually, they emerged, standing close on the sidewalk. Louis snapped more photos as they parted ways. Warren seemed to say something that made Cecilia laugh softly. Then, to Louis's devastation, Warren placed a gentle hand on her cheek, leaned in, and they shared a quick kiss unmistakably affectionate. Not a diplomatic courtesy. Louis's suspicions about an affair were all but confirmed. He fought the urge to storm out, confront them violently. Instead, he gripped the wheel, letting them vanish separately into the night. Proof was vital. He needed to remain calm, find the deeper layers. Why was she with this man? The heartbreak of seeing her kiss another man mingled with dread about potential national security ramifications. The presence of the Eastern European embassy logs haunted him. Back home, Cecilia arrived around midnight. Louis pretended to be asleep. As he listened from behind half-closed eyes, he heard her typing on her phone in the hallway. The next day, he used a custom script at the Pentagon to cross-reference phone carriers' metadata, a slight bending of his authorized clearance, to glean that a certain private number had indeed exchanged multiple texts with Cecilia's phone, matching the time she arrived home. The number, registered under an alias, connected to an address near the same foreign embassy. The net tightened. This was not just infidelity, it smelled of clandestine foreign connections. The affair might be camouflage for something darker. When Stanley discreetly informs Louis that a Warren Dvorak is rumored to be an undercover operative for a rival Eastern Bloc intelligence service. The CIA has him on a watch list for alleged infiltration attempts, but no conclusive proof pinned him yet. If Cecilia was meeting him, she could inadvertently, or intentionally, be passing sensitive info, given her access to high-level diplomatic intel. Louis's heart sank. The woman he loved involved with a potential foreign spy? How deep did her betrayal go? Was she manipulated, or was she complicit? One morning, Cecilia forgot her phone on the kitchen counter as she rushed to an early breakfast meeting. Louis seized the opportunity. 5 minutes was all he needed. Quickly, he used a forensic phone dongle from his toolkit, scanning for recently deleted messages. Among them, he found Warren, alias, meeting at the embassy courtyard 7:00 p.m. Bring the relevant files. We must be cautious. Cecilia. Understood. I have intel on the new cybersecurity protocols. We'll share discreetly. Miss you. A wave of nausea overwhelmed Louis. She was sharing cybersecurity data his domain, or at least data from the government side. This escalated from personal affair to potential treason. He carefully replaced the phone, then retreated, mind racing. He had to confirm the extent. But the text explicitly pointed to national security info. This was no typical fling. With trembling hands, Louis realized his wife was involved in espionage selling or leaking security protocols to a foreign agent, disguised under the pretense of intimacy. The personal betrayal stung, but the professional betrayal could devastate an entire nation's defense. The stakes soared. Louis, newly certain Cecilia is not just cheating, but colluding with an undercover foreign spy. It's time for him to plan a precise, covert response. The heartbreak merges with patriotic duty, fueling the impetus for revenge that merges personal fury with a sense of national protection. Chapter 3. Louis returned to his office at the Pentagon, swirling with conflicting emotions. He faced a crossroads. 1. Confront Cecilia personally about the affair and possible espionage. 2. Immediately inform his superiors at the Department of Defense and let them handle the investigation. 3. Proceed with a covert operation in collaboration with trusted contacts, ensuring he had ironclad evidence before alerting official channels. He recognized that if Cecilia's actions were already advanced, official channels might act too slowly or tip her off prematurely. As for confronting her at home with partial evidence, it might only drive her deeper into secrecy. He decided on a stealth approach. Gather comprehensive proof, then deliver a conclusive blow that ensnares both Cecilia and her foreign lover, protecting national security and ensuring no escape. Revenge with a purpose, he mused grimly. He confided in Stanley, again the CIA operative who'd initially helped with surveillance. Stanley understood the sensitivity, cautioning Louis that interagency turf wars could arise if they didn't handle it carefully. We need a watertight case, Stanley said. If the Bureau, FBI, or your Pentagon superiors sniff partial info, they might spook Warren. He'll vanish, and your wife might slip away, too. Stanley proposed a quiet synergy with a CIA counterintelligence squad. They'd supply resources but keep it off official record until they had enough to press charges. Meanwhile, Louis could exploit his cybersecurity expertise to further trace digital footprints, hack camera feeds at foreign embassies, track email chains, etc. A delicate mission, skirting the edges of legality, yet arguably crucial for national defense. Louis agreed, forging a clandestine alliance. He felt a swirl of guilt about hiding it from his immediate Pentagon chain of command, but the potential outcome justified it in his mind. begins with the plan to hack the embassy's internal camera system. Officially, direct hacking of a foreign embassy could be considered an act of aggression or even war. But Stanley explained they'd found an exploit in the brand of security cameras installed at that particular location, a known firmware vulnerability. If used quietly, they might glean footage of Warren and Cecilia's secret meets. To avoid detection, Lewis set up a false flag approach. He'd route the infiltration through multiple proxy servers scattered worldwide, obscuring the hack's origin. Late one night in a CIA safe house, he typed away at a custom console, sweat beading on his brow. If discovered, this maneuver could land him in hot water, but the risk was outweighed by the necessity. Finally, around 2 a.m., the system responded with success. Video feeds from the embassy's corridors, lobbies, courtyard, and VIP rooms flickered onto a side monitor. Stanley and Lewis exchanged tense nods. Step 1 accomplished. They had eyes inside the fortress of secrets. Over the next few days, Louis combed the embassy's archived camera footage for signs of Cecilia or Warren. At first, nothing definitive. Then, one afternoon, he stumbled on an older file from about a week prior. In a VIP lounge on the embassy's upper floor, the camera showed a figure in a dark suit. Another figure entered, Cecilia. They greeted each other with an intimate hug. The audio was faint, but some words were decipherable. New encryption protocols. Must deliver soon. Hush, hush. The rest was muffled. They parted after a few minutes, exchanging a quick kiss. The timestamp matched an evening Cecilia had claimed to be in a Senate briefing. Lewis's hands clenched at the blatant lies. Now, he had solid proof of her physical presence at the embassy, interacting intimately with a known foreign operative. His heartbreak was nearly overshadowed by anger and a sense of duty. The betrayal was real, not just personal, but national. Stanley proposed a strategic approach. Gather enough on-camera evidence of actual information exchange documents, USB drives, or direct mention of code names. The partial footage was helpful, but might not stand up alone in a federal court. We want them indicted for espionage, Stanley stressed. We need to show explicit data transfer or an admission that they're funneling U.S. secrets to a hostile power. Louis felt a pang. This was his wife they were discussing. The plan would ruin her career, her life. But the alternative was letting her continue to sabotage national security. He steeled his resolve. She'd chosen this path. To expedite matters, Louis considered planting false cybersecurity data that might lure Cecilia and Warren into a final incriminating exchange, something so valuable they couldn't resist. If they took the bait, captured on video, it would be the ultimate smoking gun. He drafted up a decoy set of top-secret missile defense protocols in reality, a fictional system with subtle clues that it was contrived. If Warren tried to use or sell it, the Foreign Intelligence Service might realize it was bogus, but by then, the arrest would be done. The idea was reminiscent of classic counterintelligence tactics. Stanley approved. They'd wait to see if Cecilia took the bait from her end, presumably handing it over during one of her hush-hush rendezvous with Warren. With hidden cameras rolling, they'd have irrefutable evidence of espionage. The trap was laid. In the midst of these high-level plans, the emotional toll weighed on Lewis. Late one night, he confronted Cecilia about her extended absences. "Where have you been? You said you had a State Department debrief, but your schedule doesn't match the logs," he pressed, voice quivering with pent-up anger. "You're lying to me, Cecilia." She tried to remain composed. "I can't discuss every nuance of my job. You know that, Louis. Some is classified," he flared. "I also have a classified job, but I still manage to share daily events without betraying national secrets. Don't gaslight me. Something's off about you lately." Her eyes flashed with indignation. "You're paranoid. I'm juggling multiple foreign contacts, trying to keep the peace. You, of all people, should understand." She stormed off to the guest room, leaving Louis fuming. The tension soared, but he chose not to fully reveal his knowledge yet. The trap was close to completion. Patience was key. We see the elaborate plan forming, hacking the embassy cameras, preparing a final sting operation, and the heartbreak fueling Louis to ensure his wife's betrayal is brought to justice. Next, we escalate further as the decoy data is introduced and the tension between them intensifies. Chapter 4. Louis spent the following days refining the decoy missile defense documents, a set of elegant, technical schematics that looked authentic to the untrained eye. He added references to non-existent encryption ciphers, referencing plausible but fabricated project names. On a secure laptop at the CIA safe house, he created a tidy PDF bundle with official-looking classification markings. Top secret, special access required. Then, using his Pentagon credentials, he placed the file in a hidden corner of the department's internal share, accessible by certain roles. He knew Cecilia had partial clearance in the diplomatic corps, but not enough for top-tier missile data. If she stumbled upon it, she would presumably realize its high value. With luck, her curiosity or Warren's instructions would lead her to exfiltrate it. That was precisely the moment they'd capture on camera or in traceable logs, completing the evidence chain. Stanley arranged background watchers on the CIA side, ensuring the file could be flagged the moment someone downloaded it. If it indeed ended up in the foreign embassy, the operation's success would be assured. A week later, the foreign embassy hosted a lavish diplomatic banquet, one of those hush-hush soirees where select U.S. officials and foreign dignitaries mingled. Louis discovered from an internal list that Cecilia was invited. She never mentioned it at home, intensifying his suspicions. Meanwhile, Stanley insisted this event might be perfect for the final sting. Louis, with CIA backing, contrives an excuse to attend the banquet incognito. The Pentagon sometimes sends a cybersecurity representative to official gatherings, under the guise of ensuring secure communications. The embassy grudgingly allowed him entry. He arrived in a sharp tuxedo, blending among the guests, while concealed earpieces linked him to Stanley and a small CIA support team outside. The scene: ornate chandeliers, tables laden with gourmet cuisine, servers carrying trays of champagne, and a hushed undercurrent of backroom deal-making. Diplomats from multiple nations drifted in small clusters, discussing everything from trade pacts to cultural exchanges. Louis soon spotted Cecilia in a corner, engaged in conversation with a foreign ambassador's aide. She looked radiant yet guarded, scanning the crowd as if waiting for someone. Eventually, Warren appeared, a debonair man with a subtle air of confidence. He greeted Cecilia with a discreet handshake, though their eyes locked intimately. Louis stayed out of view, capturing the moment on a covert phone camera. Then he edged closer, earpiece crackling as Stanley whispered, "We have partial vantage from the embassy cameras. You're on your own for audio." Slipping behind a potted palm, Louis overheard fragments of their conversation. Warren: "Have you acquired those updated ciphers? We must finalize our operation soon." Cecilia: "Yes, I found a new file. Very high level. But it's tricky. I don't want to trigger any alarms downloading it." Warren: "Time is short. Our contact demands we deliver. We'll handle alarms. Just be sure to get the data." Their voices dropped further, making it hard to catch every word. But the gist was clear. Warren pressed Cecilia to retrieve top-secret encryption plans, presumably the decoy Louis had planted. This was the moment he'd prayed for, a direct, incriminating conversation about stealing missile defense or encryption data. Then, to Louis's dismay, Warren leaned in, placing a gentle hand on Cecilia's waist, murmuring something that made her smile warmly. They left the banquet hall, presumably for a more secluded area. Louis followed at a safe distance, heart pounding with equal measures of rage and heartbreak. In a quiet corridor leading to a smaller lounge, Warren and Cecilia paused. He pulled her close, pressed a soft kiss to her temple. She didn't resist. "I'll set up an alias account for you, transfer the file, and we'll pass it on discreetly. Our superiors expect results," Warren muttered. Cecilia nodded, evidently torn. "I hate the secrecy, but I can't back out. Just promise me we'll keep personal matters separate from official tasks." He smirked. "Our personal ties are half the reason we're so effective together." Louis could barely contain himself. He had the photographic evidence from the corridor security camera, but he wanted audio or visual confirmation of them referencing the decoy. He inched closer, phone capturing every snippet. Suddenly, the corridor door swung open from behind him. Another diplomat stepped out, eyeing Louis suspiciously. Startled, Louis nearly dropped the phone. Cecilia, alerted by the noise, turned. For a split second, her eyes met Louis's. He ducked behind a marble column. Did she see him? Possibly. Her brow furrowed, but Warren tugged her away, whispering, "Let's go to the VIP lounge." She followed, yet her expression carried a flicker of alarm, as though suspecting an observer. Louis cursed under his breath. This might spook them. He signaled Stanley via the earpiece. "They're moving to the VIP lounge. I might have been spotted. Keep the cameras rolling if possible." Back in the main hall, Louis decided not to push further. If Cecilia realized he was tailing them, it could sabotage the operation. He withdrew into the swirl of guests, occasionally glimpsing the lounge door. After half an hour, Warren and Cecilia emerged, rejoining the banquet. They parted ways soon after, leaving through separate exits. Louis lingered another hour to maintain appearances, then quietly slipped out. That night, he sat at the CIA safe house with Stanley, reviewing the corridor footage, text logs, and partial audio from his phone. It was enough to confirm an espionage conspiracy may be enough for the feds, but they still needed the final act, capturing the actual theft of the decoy file. The stage was set. Chapter 5. The day after the banquet, Louis confronted a new wave of turmoil. He sought deeper cooperation from the intelligence community. Although Stanley had been discreet, the magnitude of potential espionage was too large to remain an off-the-books project. High-level CIA officials got wind of the situation. They demanded a briefing, curious how a Pentagon cybersecurity specialist uncovered an infiltration that could compromise the U.S. defense system. It was decided that a small specialized counterintelligence team would be formed Project Nightfall, tasked with unveiling the full extent of Warren's network. Louis would remain an embedded consultant, given his unique vantage as Cecilia's husband. The arrangement was precarious. If Cecilia found out, she might realize her husband was behind the leaks and deception, setting off a meltdown that could jeopardize the sting. The CIA stressed absolute secrecy. Out of the blue, Catherine, Cecilia's younger sister, messaged Louis privately. She confessed to suspecting that Cecilia was involved with a foreign man. Catherine had visited Cecilia's place recently, noticing cryptic notes referencing encrypted codes and military protocols. Shocked, Catherine had tried to confront Cecilia, who dismissed it as just official documents I'm storing. Sensing tension, Catherine turned to Louis. "I have a bad feeling. Is Cece in trouble?" Louis, reluctant to reveal the entire espionage scandal, merely said, "I'm investigating something serious. Please keep this between us." Catherine's call reinforced the looming reality. that Cecilia was entangled in more than an affair. She was knee-deep in national security theft. Time was running short. Finally, it happened. A system alert pinged Lewis's secure phone. The decoy missile file was accessed using a credential linked to Cecilia's account. Late at night. The logs indicated she copied it from the hidden location Louis had set up, transferring it to an external encrypted drive. This was the smoking gun. Next step would be delivering it to Warren, likely at the foreign embassy, or a new location. Louis breathed heavily. The trap had snapped. Now, all they needed was to capture the handoff. That same evening, Cecilia acted jittery. She barely spoke at dinner, tapped away on her laptop repeatedly. At one point, Louis quietly peeked over her shoulder, glimpsing lines of encrypted chat. She slammed the laptop shut, glaring at him. "Don't snoop, Louis. You know how private my job can be." He forced a tight smile, heading to bed early to avoid confrontation. The tension soared. He realized a confrontation was inevitable if she sensed him creeping too close. Meanwhile, the heartbreak coiled in his chest. He still recalled their wedding day, her laughter, her vow to remain faithful. Now she lied daily, betraying not just him, but the country. The mixture of rage and sorrow consumed him. Meanwhile, Stanley's team discovered more about Warren. He used multiple aliases in different embassies, had a rumored direct line to a foreign intelligence bureau. He specialized in exploiting personal relationships to glean restricted data, especially in politically sensitive zones like Washington, D.C. Another rumor suggested he had manipulated at least 2 other officials in smaller roles, but never got indicted due to insufficient evidence. Now, with the newly downloaded decoy file, Warren was on the verge of the biggest infiltration of his career unless the CIA and Louis intervened. This knowledge spurred them to finalize a grand reveal plan. Chapter 10 style, but more legwork lay ahead. When Louis nearly gets caught rummaging through Cecilia's desk, he'd come home early, suspecting she might store a physical copy of the decoy file or related notes. In the locked drawer, he found a USB labeled Diplomatic Memos. Before he could plug it into a small scanning device, the front door clicked. Cecilia was back. Panicking, he locked the drawer, hurried to the kitchen, feigning he was making coffee. She stepped in, eyebrows raised. "You're home early?" she asked, suspicion evident in her voice. She noticed the slight flush on his face. "Everything all right?" He plastered on a neutral expression. "All good. Just finished a short day at the Pentagon. Thought I'd surprise you." Her gaze flicked to her study door. He saw her jaw tighten. Possibly she suspected something. The moment was tense, but ended with her brushing past him, retreating to the study to prepare notes. Another bullet dodged. End of Chapter 5. The puzzle tightens. Cecilia has downloaded the decoy. A final handoff to Warren is imminent, but time is short. Louis hovers on a razor's edge between heartbreak and retribution. Chapter 6. Louis gathered with Stanley and a select handful of CIA operatives in a covert conference room beneath an unassuming building near the Potomac River. The mood was somber. They had the evidence of espionage. The next step was orchestrating a public, inarguable takedown that would neutralize both Cecilia and Warren. Public arrests were risky, but a silent approach might let Warren slip away. The CIA insisted on a clear, lawful operation culminating in an airtight federal case. They decided to exploit an upcoming diplomatic gala, a black tie event at a prestigious hotel rumored to be hosting high-level foreign ministers. Warren and Cecilia would likely attend, seeing it as a perfect chance to exchange the final decoy data. The CIA, with Lewis's collaboration, would surveil them meticulously and nab them at the moment of the handoff. The Grand Bellamont was a five-star establishment with gilded ceilings, plush red carpets, and security staff posted at every entrance. The gala in question was an invitingly affair for top diplomats. Attendees included ambassadors, intelligence attachés, even a handful of high-profile politicians. For Warren, it was the ideal cover to finalize his theft with Cecilia. Stanley arranged for a specialized CIA strike team to embed among the staff, some posing as waiters, others as hotel security. The plan was to let Warren and Cecilia approach their private rendezvous, let them confirm the data exchange, then swoop in. Lewis would attend incognito again, using his cybersecurity staffer excuse. Twist 3. The CIA discovered a hidden detail the foreign minister from Warren's country was scheduled to appear too. Possibly, Warren intended to pass the decoy file directly to him or his aides. This heightened the stakes, as the official might have diplomatic immunity, complicating an arrest. They needed to isolate Warren and Cecilia before any chain of custody passed the stolen data further up. On the evening of the gala, Lewis arrived early, clad in a sleek tuxedo, an earpiece discreetly hidden beneath his collar. He spotted no sign of Cecilia yet. He took up a vantage at the bar, sipping soda water with a twist of lime, pretending it was a cocktail. The hotel's ornate chandeliers and soft classical music provided an elegant backdrop to the tension gnawing inside him. An hour later, Cecilia appeared wearing a stunning emerald gown that accentuated her poised figure. She greeted a few acquaintances, smiling politely, though a flicker of tension lurked in her eyes. Warren, similarly dressed in a tailored suit, joined her in conversation across the room. Louis noted the subtle way they avoided direct eye contact in the open, presumably to minimize suspicion. Stanley's voice whispered through the earpiece. "We've identified a private suite on the top floor, reserved under an alias matching Warren's known patterns. If they slip away upstairs, that's likely the meeting site. We have partial camera coverage, but not perfect." To ensure Warren believed the decoy data was authentic, the CIA had inserted references in official channels about pending missile encryption updates, intentionally letting them leak to the foreign diplomats. The ruse heightened Warren's eagerness. Meanwhile, Cecilia was presumably carrying the data on a USB or a secure phone. Sure enough, after some polite mingling, Warren and Cecilia quietly drifted toward the elevator lobby. Lewis followed at a distance. The CIA's second team was on the 8th floor, waiting. Cameras captured the pair stepping into a private suite, room 812. Stanley's subdued instruction crackled. "Wait until we confirm they exchange the data, then we breach." Lewis felt a knot in his stomach as he rode a separate elevator with 2 CIA men, hearts pounding in unison. He pictured Cecilia inside the suite, preparing to commit outright treason. The woman he once adored. A swirl of memories flashed. Their honeymoon in Italy, late-night talks about politics and art, jokes about each other's job secrecy. Now, he was about to watch her downfall. He steeled himself. A betrayer to the nation warranted no mercy, he told himself. And she had personally shattered his trust. Yet tears threatened to rise, overshadowed by grim determination. On a concealed tablet, a feed from a hidden camera in the suite's hallway showed Warren and Cecilia inside. She opened her small clutch, retrieving a silver USB drive. Warren produced a small scanning device. Their lips moved, presumably verifying the files. The audio crackled. "Cecilia, once you confirm it, our arrangement is done. I'm risking everything." Warren, "You'll be rewarded. Our government appreciates your service, and I personally, well, you know." He stroked her cheek. She inhaled sharply, then pressed the USB into his hand. He connected it to the scanner, eyes lighting up as it verified data. Yes. Perfect, he murmured. Twist 4. A sudden beep on the scanner triggered confusion on Warren's face. It's showing a mismatch. Could this be incomplete? Cecilia paled. What do you mean? He fiddled with the device. The encryption labels are correct, but some data segments look strange. Are you sure this is the final version? Cecilia frowned. That's what I pulled. Don't you trust me? Warren's eyes narrowed suspiciously. I do. Let me recheck. The tension soared as the decoy threatened to unravel. The CIA earpiece crackled with anxiety. If Warren realized it was bogus, he might suspect a sting and flee. Seizing the moment before Warren had time to fully analyze the decoy, Stanley gave the order. Go now! The CIA team moved in. Lewis joined them, breath hammering. In the hallway, 3 armed agents rushed the suite door with a universal key card. They burst in shouting, "Federal agents! Don't move!" Warren gaped, the USB drive in his hand. Cecilia whirled in shock, eyes wide in betrayal, as she caught sight of Lewis among the silhouettes. She gasped, "Louis!" Chaos erupted. Warren tried to dash for the side window. Agents tackled him, disarming a hidden pistol from his waist. Cecilia sank to her knees, covering her face with trembling hands, the horrifying realization of her fate setting in. In seconds, they were cuffed, read their rights, the room swirling with tension and the echoes of heartbreak. Lewis stood at the threshold, paralyzed. His wife looked up, tears streaming, confusion etched across her face. "Why you?" she muttered. He felt no triumph, only a hollow sense of finality. The plan had succeeded, revealing both the personal and national betrayal for all to see. Chapter 7. The suite on the 8th floor of the Grand Belmont Hotel was a scene of confusion and heartbreak. Lewis, still in his tuxedo, watched as CIA operatives restrained Cecilia, his wife, and Warren, the foreign agent, with zip ties. A hush had descended over the hallway, except for the hushed commands of the team leader checking Warren for hidden weapons. In that tense silence, the personal and professional worlds of Lewis collided violently. Cecilia's eyes darted around, frantic and tear-stained. "Louis," she whispered, "is this your doing?" He swallowed hard, voice hoarse. "You left me no choice." Stanley, the CIA officer who had orchestrated the sting, stepped in. "We'll transport them to a secure interrogation facility. We have enough to press serious charges." Then he lowered his tone to address Lewis privately. "I'm sorry about everything, but we have to do our jobs." Louis nodded stiffly, numbness settling over the raw heartbreak. The moment he had spent weeks preparing for coordinating evidence, planning the decoy was here, and it felt like someone else's nightmare. He turned away as the operatives led Warren and Cecilia out, heading for separate unmarked vehicles. Cameras flashed from curious onlookers in the corridor, though few realized the magnitude of what they witnessed. An hour later, in a CIA safe house on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., Lewis sat before a stainless steel table with a single lamp overhead. It wasn't an interrogation room, but it felt cold and sterile. Stanley leaned against the wall, reading updates on his phone. "Warren's definitely affiliated with a foreign intelligence service," Stanley said, looking up. "We found multiple fake passports in his possession. The USB drive he tried to verify is with our forensic team now. They'll confirm the decoy data and see if it had any modifications." Lewis took a shaky breath. "And Cecilia?" Stanley sighed. "She's being processed. She'll likely face charges under the Espionage Act for knowingly passing classified materials to a foreign agent. The fact that you orchestrated a decoy doesn't lessen her intent, unfortunately for her." A wave of despair washed over Louis. He had wanted accountability, but hearing the official label espionage brought the harsh reality crashing down. If convicted, Cecilia could face decades in prison. The personal cost was astronomical. "Does she know I was behind the decoy specifically?" he asked, quietly. Stanley shook his head. "Not the details, but she likely suspects. Our official story is that we flagged suspicious digital footprints and launched the sting. We'll keep your deeper involvement hidden to protect you from scrutiny, and also to keep the chain of evidence clean." Though Louis appreciated the protection, guilt gnawed at him. He had effectively entrapped his wife, exposing her betrayal while also fulfilling his patriotic duty. The CIA planned to use him further. On the second day post-arrest, Louis received permission to briefly see Cecilia in a secure holding area. She waited in an interrogation room behind a glass partition, dressed in a plain gray jumpsuit, hair disheveled, eyes haunted. As he entered, an armed guard hovered by the door. Cecilia's voice shook. "Why? Why do this to me? To us?" He bit back anger. "You were selling out the country, sleeping with a foreign spy. I had to stop it." She pressed trembling fingers to her forehead, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It started innocently. Warren approached me as a friendly contact. Then I fell for him, yes. But I never intended actual treason. It spiraled. He persuaded me we could help maintain global balance by sharing intel. I was blind." Louis closed his eyes, the heartbreak resurging. He recalled the once-a-loving woman he married, now tarnished by secrets and betrayal. "You have to face the consequences, Cecilia. There's no going back." She sobbed, leaning against the glass. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to betray you or the nation. I was naive. And yes, I was unfaithful. I can't believe it's come to this." He felt tears sting his own eyes, but forced composure. "I loved you, but you made your choice." The guard ended the visit. As Louis walked away, he heard her last plea. "Please find a way to help me." He didn't turn around. His heart ached, but his resolve remained. For the sake of duty and for his own sense of justice, he would see this through. The media quickly got wind that a major espionage arrest took place at the Belmont. Outlets speculated about a foreign spy ring. The name Cecilia Johnson leaked, fueling a swirl of rumors. The State Department, the Pentagon, and various agencies scrambled to contain the PR fallout. Lewis's immediate superiors at the Pentagon summoned him. They demanded an explanation. He provided a heavily sanitized version, stating that, through standard security oversight, suspicion arose regarding certain channels. CIA took lead. We discovered the infiltration. Officially, he'd remain working in cybersecurity, but with limited access to keep him from conflict of interest. He accepted the arrangement, wearing a stoic mask. The CIA discovered Warren's phone logs indicated a potential co-conspirator within the U.S. government, someone higher up or in parallel to Cecilia, who might have guided them to certain targets. This suggested a broader espionage network. Lewis realized that while Cecilia was at fault, she might have been part of an even bigger puzzle. The story wasn't over. By the chapter's end, Cecilia awaited formal charges in a high-security holding facility. Warren was under separate lockup, defiant in interviews. The CIA gleaned tidbits that the decoy data had them both fooled, but they needed more. Who else in the diplomatic circles was compromised? The wheels of justice started turning, promising a high-profile trial, especially if the press kept pushing for details. Lewis hovered in a limbo of sorrow and anger, preparing to testify if needed, while grappling with the destruction of his marriage. Friends and family whispered behind his back, pitying or blaming him. Meanwhile, he suspected that the looming trial would unearth more secrets. Chapter 8. 3 days after the arrest, the Department of Justice filed formal charges of espionage and conspiracy against Warren and Cecilia. Media outlets titled it "The Diplomat's Betrayal," sensationalizing Cecilia's double life. The arresting agencies reinforced security around them, fearing foreign operatives might attempt extraction or retribution. Cecilia's attorney, Edith Kavanaugh, a reputed defense lawyer with experience in national security cases, began assembling a strategy. She pressed the prosecution for evidence disclosure, aiming to see what exact documents Cecilia was accused of stealing. The decoy file's existence remained a central piece, but the prosecutors carefully withheld details, citing ongoing investigations. Edith visited Cecilia in the detention center, urging her to cooperate fully for a plea deal. At first, Cecilia resisted, claiming she was manipulated, but Edith pointed out, "Your romantic entanglement with Warren won't absolve you if the government has a strong espionage case. You could face life in prison." Tearfully, Cecilia realized the severity. She asked if Louis might help. Edith shook her head. "Your husband is effectively aligned with the government on this. He's a witness, not your ally in court." Stanley briefed Louis and a small CIA group about developments. Searching Warren's communication logs revealed references to Operation Serpent, a suspected infiltration program from that foreign power. Rumors suggested Warren wasn't acting alone. Possibly a senior official in the U.S. chain was funneling Heidier secrets to them. Cecilia was but a cog in the scheme. The CIA identified a code name, Nightshade, in the logs, a possible top-level mole embedded in U.S. intelligence or diplomacy. If Nightshade existed, they outranked Cecilia significantly, orchestrating or guiding espionage from within. This overshadowed Cecilia's betrayal, implying a bigger threat still active. The CIA wanted to flip Cecilia into providing leads to find Nightshade. Lewis's gut churned. The situation extended beyond a personal cheating scandal. If there was an unknown traitor with bigger clearance, national security was still at risk. The CIA sought leverage, forcing Cecilia to name any co-conspirators. But was she aware of Nightshade, or had Warren kept her in the dark? Despite his heartbreak, Louis found himself dogged by nightmares memories of happier times with Cecilia. He recalled silly weekend getaways, nights spent discussing world affairs. Now, each recollection felt like a knife twist. Even if her claims of being manipulated held some truth, it didn't erase her lies and betrayal. One evening, he collapsed into a chair at home, sipping whiskey alone. The living room walls seemed to close in, haunted by her absence. The guilt of orchestrating her downfall warred with the knowledge that she deserved accountability. He thought of the upcoming depositions and how he'd be forced to testify, effectively sealing her fate in court. Could he handle that? He stared at their wedding photo on the mantel. "You forced my hand," he muttered to the empty air. "I had no choice." Edith, Cecilia's lawyer, requested a private negotiation with the Justice Department, hinting that Cecilia might provide intel about Warren's network if offered leniency. The prosecutors hesitated. Cecilia was a key conspirator. However, the mention of a potential Nightshade mole caused them to at least listen. Cecilia admitted, in an off-the-record proffer, that Warren had mentioned receiving instructions from Nightshade, someone embedded in a U.S. security agency. She claimed ignorance of the person's real identity or specific rank. She only knew it was someone high enough to direct operations. If the DOJ gave her partial immunity, she might recall more details about the infiltration times, possible code names, or signals. This triggered a flurry of behind-the-scenes negotiations. The CIA, FBI, and Pentagon leadership debated, should they cut a deal with Cecilia, a traitor, to chase a bigger fish? The moral quandary was intense. Meanwhile, Lewis, hearing rumors of this potential immunity, felt sick. She might avoid a life sentence if she cooperated. Was that justice for the personal betrayal and the national risk she posed? Word spread among extended family. Catherine, Cecilia's sister, sought out Louis again. She tearfully asked if there was any chance Cecilia had been coerced or blackmailed by Warren. Lewis recounted the evidence. She had methodically stolen data, snuck around. Coercion might have been partial, but she actively participated. Catherine wept, lamenting the ruin of Cecilia's once promising career. Louis's parents also weighed in, urging him to move on emotionally. But it wasn't so easy. The trial loomed, and his role as a star witness meant he was entangled in the legal complexities. The heartbreak was far from over. Deep down, a lingering question. Could Cecilia's cooperation lead them to a bigger conspirator who might have spurred or exploited her vulnerability? Louis tried to remain stoic, but the possibility that she was manipulated by a shadowy nightshade unsettled him. It didn't excuse her affair, yet it cast her more as a pawn than an all-powerful traitor. The preliminary hearing was set for next week. The media whipped up a frenzy. Pundits debated if Cecilia was a naive diplomat seduced by a foreign spy or a cunning conspirator. Warren's lawyers tried to spin a narrative that no real secrets were stolen, only bogus data. But the fact that they intended to pass it off as real was enough for an espionage conspiracy charge. Louis prepared mentally for the hearing. He steeled himself for the humiliating moment he'd have to describe how he discovered his wife's affair and involvement in sabotage, bearing personal anguish in front of the world. The stage is set for a high-stakes legal battle. Cecilia contemplates cooperation to unmask Nightshade. Warren remains defiant, and Lewis struggles with his role as a key witness, overshadowed by heartbreak, yet committed to seeing justice served. Chapter 9. In a discreet federal courthouse off Constitution Avenue, a grand jury convened to examine the evidence for a formal indictment against Warren and Cecilia. The prosecution introduced the decoy USB, transcripts of encrypted chats, and footage from the embassy cameras. Agents recounted the sting at the Belmont Hotel, establishing that both defendants conspired to pass off U.S. secrets. Louis was called in to testify behind closed doors, explaining his role as a cybersecurity specialist, though they downplayed how deeply he was involved in planting the decoy. He recounted discovering suspicious logs pointing to Cecilia's account, her repeated rendezvous with Warren. A wave of discomfort swept over him as he had to speak about the personal betrayal under oath, describing how he tailed her to the expensive restaurant, witnessed an intimate kiss. The jurors exchanged glances of sympathy and astonishment. By the end, the grand jury returned a formal indictment for espionage, conspiracy to commit espionage, and unauthorized transfer of classified data. Warren's count was more severe given his foreign agent status. Cecilia's charges were similarly grave, but the prosecution hinted they'd consider lesser sentencing if she cooperated fully. The next step, a high-profile trial. The date was set for 2 months later, giving both sides time to prepare. Stanley and his CIA colleagues pressed Cecilia in separate interviews to glean more about Nightshade. She hesitated, claiming Warren only referenced the code name a few times, never specifying an agency. She suggested Warren had told her, "Nightshade ensures we know which systems are vulnerable, which contacts can be subverted. They're the real gatekeeper." But details were fuzzy. Frustration mounted. The CIA suspected Cecilia was either lying or truly ignorant. Warren refused to talk, mocking interrogators with half-smiles. If Nightshade remained hidden, the infiltration threat persisted. Lewis watched from the sidelines, uncertain whether to hate Cecilia more for possible deception or pity her if she truly was out of her depth. Catherine visited Louis late one evening, brandishing a small slip of paper she found among Cecilia's belongings. It read, NS Rendezvous 14 Mod East Mall. The date was from 2 weeks prior to the sting. Could NS stand for Nightshade? Possibly. Or it might be something else. Stanley's team cross-referenced traffic cams near the East Mall for that day. They identified Warren and an unidentified figure wearing a hood, meeting briefly. The figure was taller, heavier set, possibly older. The camera footage was too grainy to confirm an identity. Another dead end. Or maybe a crucial clue. The emotional fallout in Lewis's personal life reached a tipping point. He moved out of the marital home to a small apartment near his workplace. Staring at blank walls in the evenings, he battled waves of sorrow. Friends from the Pentagon tried to cheer him up, but he felt restless. He considered therapy, but the swirl of a federal trial overshadowed everything. A phone call from Edith, Cecilia's lawyer, shocked him. Cecilia wants a private mediation with you. She says there's something only you can confirm about your earlier infiltration logs. She claims it might reduce her culpability. Lewis was torn. Should he meet her? She was an indicted spy, yet the curiosity about Nightshade and the flicker of unresolved feelings pulled at him. They arranged a supervised meeting in a small law office. 2 guards stood outside, Edith and a legal mediator inside, plus Louis. Cecilia wore a modest blouse and slacks, her hair neatly tied back, but her eyes carried dark circles of stress. She spoke softly. Louis, I'm sorry for everything. I know an apology can't fix this. But there's a detail about the logs you discovered. I never told Warren how to bypass certain firewalls. That came from another source. If you recall, months ago you mentioned an anomaly in the Pentagon system, like a ghost user? Louis frowned, recollecting. Indeed, about 6 months prior, he had encountered a suspicious user session that vanished before he could trace it. He chalked it up to a glitch. Cecilia claimed that was Nightshade feeding her partial access credentials, bridging the gap for Warren. I might help identify them if I see certain logs again, she said, voice trembling. Please, let me try. Lewis's pulse quickened. If she genuinely could point to a digital fingerprint revealing the mole's identity, it might be huge. But was this a ploy for leniency or genuine contrition? At length, they agreed to bring her in front of a CIA forensic lab, under guard, to examine archived logs. The attorneys hammered out a temporary arrangement. If her info led to the unmasking of Nightshade, the prosecution might reduce the espionage charges to lesser conspiracy or something that spared her a life sentence. She'd still face punishment, but potentially less severe. As Louis listened, part of him recognized how twisted it was that he, the betrayed husband, now might help his unfaithful wife reduce her prison time. But if it closed the door on a deeper infiltration threat, it served the country. He swallowed the bitterness and agreed. I'll let you see the logs, under the CIA's watchful eyes. No funny business, he warned. Cecilia nodded tearfully. Thank you. I wish I could undo what I've done, but I'll try to salvage something. The meeting ended with no personal reconciliation, just a business-like plan. Louis left feeling hollow, questioning how Chapter 10 would bring the major consequences and revelations. He suspected that unmasking Nightshade might be the final puzzle piece in this saga of betrayal. The upcoming trial looms. Cecilia seeks partial redemption by helping identify the deeper mole. Lewis struggles with cooperating, torn between duty and heartbreak. Chapter 10. On a brisk morning, the United States District Court in downtown D.C. buzzed with reporters, uniformed officers, and high-profile lawyers. Inside the large, wood-paneled courtroom, a hush fell as the clerk announced the start of the espionage trial for Warren and Cecilia. The judge presiding was known for a no-nonsense stance on national security cases. Louis, seated among the key witnesses, felt cold dread in his stomach. He clutched a folder containing documents that proved the timeline of Cecilia's betrayal. He glimpsed her across the room, dressed in conservative attire, face pale. Warren sat beside his own counsel, exuding a strange confidence, as if certain he could manipulate the system. The prosecution laid out the evidence, methodically. 1. Camera footage from the foreign embassy, showing Warren and Cecilia exchanging physical affection and referencing stolen data. 2. Intercepted messages detailing the decoy missile encryption files. 3. Testimony from CIA agents about the Bellamont Hotel sting. 4. Lewis's accounts of suspicious logs in the Pentagon system, plus personal observation of their covert meetings. Each piece hammered home the conspiracy. Warren's lawyer attempted to downplay the lack of actual classified info, pointing out the data was a decoy. But the prosecution argued that conspiracy to commit espionage, attempting to pass what they believed was classified info, was still a grave felony. The intention was clear. Cecilia's attorney, Edith, emphasized her client was emotionally manipulated by a cunning foreign agent. While it didn't exonerate her, Edith framed Cecilia as a lesser conspirator who provided partial assistance under undue influence. The jury's expressions varied, some looking sympathetic, others stony-faced. On the second day of the trial, in a stunning development, the prosecution revealed Cecilia had offered to assist in identifying a high-level mole known as nightshade. This caught the media's attention. A hush enveloped the courtroom as the lead prosecutor explained that if Cecilia's cooperation proved genuine, they might consider recommending a lesser sentence. Warren's face twisted with rage, realizing she was turning state's evidence. He whispered furiously to his counsel. Meanwhile, the judge allowed a brief recess to discuss this new dimension. The press scrambled to record every detail. Over lunch, cameras caught glimpses of Warren glaring daggers at Cecilia as she was escorted away by guards. At a secure CIA lab with a judge's special permission, Cecilia was handed sanitized log excerpts under watchful eyes. Louis stood behind bulletproof glass, observing. She studied the strings of code, pointing out anomalies reminiscent of the ghost user infiltration. Slowly, the forensics team cross-referenced the ID hash to the list of all possible Pentagon or intelligence staff. A shocking result. The hashed credentials matched a certain domain used by Catherine Cecilia's sister, but that made little sense. Catherine wasn't even in government. Further digging revealed the domain was a cover hijacked from an official named Stanley. Could Stanley be Nightshade? No, that was too obvious. Stanley was the CIA ally helping them. The forensics team realized the domain had been framed to implicate random staffers. The real user behind the credential was still hidden. But then another clue surfaced. An archived snippet of code referencing a partial email. WOM-NGov. This domain hinted at a certain top-tier official, maybe Warren or someone whose name began with W. Yet that was too literal. The puzzle deepened until a final cross-check pinned the user to an interagency system. As tensions soared, the lead forensic analyst declared, "This credential belongs to an older, seldomist account that had special privileges. Warren himself might have had a second infiltration route. Or he had an accomplice with an account named after him to mislead." The chase for Nightshade grew murky. Was Warren, ironically, also Nightshade? Or did Nightshade exploit Warren's name? The confusion reigned. The trail threatened to go cold. Returning to court, the jury was left in the dark about the specifics, only told that Cecilia's cooperation had encountered a complex twist. The trial continued. Warren took the stand, claiming he was an innocent businessman who merely flirted with a diplomat. The prosecution shredded his story, unveiling proof of multiple forged passports. The tension soared. In a dramatic exchange, the prosecutor asked Warren, "Is the alias Nightshade yours?" He feigned ignorance. The prosecutor hammered with newly deciphered logs, Cecilia's cooperation, implying Warren used Nightshade in communications. He cracked under the barrage. "You can't prove that," he barked, sweating. The jury noticed his shift from smug to defensive, a sign of guilt. Perhaps Warren truly was Nightshade after all, or at least a major link to them. After 4 grueling days, the jury deliberated. The evidence pointed overwhelmingly to guilt. They returned with a guilty verdict on conspiracy to commit espionage for both Warren and Cecilia. The weight of the decision stunned the court. Warren glared at Cecilia, who hung her head, tears falling. Yet the judge postponed final sentencing, acknowledging a pending cooperation agreement for Cecilia if she provided further leads to root out any additional conspirators. Warren faced immediate remand, no leniency expected. Louis listened to the verdict with a swirl of relief and sorrow. He had achieved the revenge of exposing Cecilia's betrayal, but the personal cost felt immeasurable. She might serve years, possibly decades. Warren might face an even harsher outcome. The fallout for them, for the foreign embassy, and for the overshadowed Nightshade puzzle remained significant. If Warren was Nightshade, the threat might be resolved. If not, a bigger traitor still lurked. The media devoured the verdict. Headlines like "Diplomatic Wife Turned Traitor Found Guilty" plastered screens nationwide. Louis found himself recognized in the streets, some praising him as a hero, others pitying him. He withdrew further from public life, longing for normalcy. The Pentagon quietly commended his role in stopping a breach, though no official medal or glory was offered. It was all hush-hush. Chapter 11. With the trial concluded, Warren and Cecilia awaited sentencing at a high-security facility. Warren, under maximum lockdown, refused any further cooperation. He faced the potential of a life sentence or deportation, though deportation for a convicted spy might be moot if the U.S. sought to keep him imprisoned. For foreign policy reasons, some speculated he might eventually be traded back to his homeland. But that was uncertain. Cecilia, under a lesser security tier, met regularly with her attorney Edith and occasionally with CIA liaisons hoping to glean more about Nightshade. She had limited success. The government recognized her partial cooperation, but still pinned her with substantial guilt. Meanwhile, a hearing for final sentencing loomed in a month. She could face anywhere from 10 years to life, depending on the judge's discretion and how much the government weighed her contrition. Louis returned to routine cybersecurity tasks at the Pentagon, but the morale shift was palpable. Colleagues offered polite sympathy. He spent nights alone in his modest apartment, haunted by the memory of Cecilia's tearful face in court. He consoled himself with the knowledge that the country was safer. He met with a divorce lawyer, acknowledging that once sentencing was finalized, he'd proceed. In the eyes of the law, they were still married. But how could they remain so after espionage, adultery, and national scandal? The lawyer assured him property division would be straightforward, especially if Cecilia remained incarcerated. But the intangible pain overshadowed any financial concerns. A letter arrived at Louis's apartment from Cecilia. Handwritten, it read, "Dear Louis, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I must ask your forgiveness even if I don't deserve it. My choices, were mine alone. I can't blame Warren or the system fully. I betrayed our marriage. I betrayed my oath. I fear I'll spend years in prison, and maybe that's just. Still, I remember the love we had, the life we built. If there's any piece of that left in your heart, know that I'm truly sorry, Cecilia. Reading it, Lewis felt his eyes blur with tears. A swirl of anger, pity, and regret plagued him. He wasn't ready to forgive. The harm done to national security was overshadowed by the personal devastation. He tucked the letter away in a drawer, uncertain if he'd ever respond. Meanwhile, Stanley discovered a fresh lead. A cryptic data leak indicated a new infiltration attempt in the same Eastern European sphere. Could Nightshade still be active, or was Warren indeed Nightshade? If so, how were they operating while Warren was locked up? Forensic analysts found a short burst of communications from the day after Warren's conviction, referencing Serpent Phase 2. That suggested an ongoing plan. Possibly a second agent existed, someone picking up where Warren left off. This revelation implied that even with Warren behind bars, the infiltration ring wasn't fully dismantled. The CIA worried that Cecilia might still hold vital clues, but was either ignorant or refusing to talk. Cecilia's sister, Catherine, visited Louis in tears, explaining how their family was shattered by scandal. Cecilia's parents felt ashamed, refusing to appear publicly. Catherine asked Louis if he'd at least speak to Cecilia about cooperating fully with the CIA to reveal everything. "She's grasping at straws," Catherine said. "But maybe if you encourage her, she'll realize it's the only chance to reduce her sentence and help the country." Louis hesitated. The idea of personally urging his traitor wife to cooperate further felt humiliating. He had no illusions about reconciling, but perhaps for the sake of closure, he might do so. He arranged a final prison visit, seeking closure for them both. Under a watchful guard's eye, in a Spartan visitation room, Louis sat across from Cecilia. She looked thinner, her once lustrous hair tied in a simple bun, dark circles under her eyes. She managed a sad smile, voice trembling. "I didn't think you'd come." He inhaled. "I came because your sister asked me, and because maybe the best thing we can do is ensure no further damage is done to the country." She nodded, eyes cast down. "What do you need from me?" "You already gave some intel, but apparently it wasn't enough. The CIA suspects a second infiltration wave. If you have anything else, share it. That's your best shot at leniency and maybe the only decent thing left to do." Cecilia clasped her hands, voice shaky. "Warren never told me specifics, but I recall an alias he mentioned once, Galatea. He said if something happened to him, Galatea would continue the plan. I never saw them, but it might be connected to this Nightshade business." "That's all I have," Louis frowned. "Why wait until now to say that?" She stared at the table. "I was ashamed. I hoped maybe I'd get a lesser charge anyway. But it's clear I'm going to prison. If it helps the country, I'll tell them." He nodded, painfully aware of how low they'd sunk, from husband and wife to a last exchange of espionage leads. "All right, I'll pass it on." He stood to leave, pausing. Her eyes shone with tears. "I loved you, you know," she whispered. "Despite it all." He managed only a sad nod and walked out, the door clanging shut behind him. The sentencing looms. Galatea emerges as another piece of the infiltration puzzle, and Louis faces the final dissolution of his marriage. Chapter 12. The day of sentencing arrived. The federal courtroom bristled with tension. Warren and Cecilia were led in by marshals. The judge took the bench, scanning the room. A hush fell among onlookers, press, and attorneys. Warren. The judge cited the severity of his espionage, a repeated pattern of infiltration. He was sentenced to 35 years in a federal penitentiary, with parole eligibility after 25. Harsh, but not life. The possibility of a political prisoner swap remained an open question. Cecilia. The judge weighed her cooperation, incomplete though it was, and her role as a secondary conspirator manipulated by Warren. Nonetheless, she knowingly violated her oath. She received 15 years in prison, with potential for parole after 10 if she continued assisting authorities. A wave of reaction rippled through the courtroom. Some found the sentence surprisingly lenient. Others felt it was still severe. Cecilia stood silently, tears slipping as the marshals led her away. She glanced toward Louis, but he stared fixedly at the floor, refusing eye contact in that final moment. With the convictions, the government initiated the standard procedure of property seizure under the Espionage Act's forfeiture clauses. Cecilia's share of marital assets' bank accounts, certain investments were frozen or seized, deemed partially tainted by espionage proceeds. The house near Capitol Hill was repossessed for government disposal, leaving Louis to salvage personal items. Though Louis retained some personal savings and his income from the Pentagon, the joint wealth he and Cecilia had built was effectively stripped away. The sense of emptiness deepened. Even the furniture and decor in the house carried memories of a life that no longer existed. Weeks after sentencing, the CIA followed up on Galatea. They discovered an online persona named Galateax, interacting with pro-espionage forums. The trail suggested an active operative continuing Operation Serpent. The CIA ramped up efforts to corner this entity, possibly Nightshade's real identity. Despite the harsh outcome for Warren and Cecilia, the infiltration threat lingered. If they succeeded in capturing Galatea, it would mark the final closure, but that might take months or years. For Louis, it served as a painful reminder that the espionage ring extended beyond his wife's betrayal. She was but one pawn. He found minimal solace in the knowledge that he had contributed to halting at least part of the infiltration. Catherine visited Louis in his Spartan apartment, helping sort the last remnants of personal belongings from the seized house. A wedding photo album, old souvenirs from overseas trips, love letters from a happier era. Louis debated throwing them away, but Catherine suggested storing them. "Maybe one day you'll want to remember the good parts," she said gently. He sighed, placing the items in a box labeled Past. For him, the final end of the marriage was official. A quiet divorce proceeding took place in absentia, with Cecilia's limited input from prison. The court dissolved their union. The heartbreak felt raw, but also freeing. The final official tie severed. On a whim, Louis penned a short note to Cecilia in prison. "Cecilia, I don't know if closure is possible, but I want you to know I release my anger. You made terrible choices. The consequences are yours. I can't promise forgiveness, but I won't carry hatred forever. I hope you find some peace." Louis. He mailed it, uncertain if she'd reply or if it mattered. Letting go was as much for his own healing as for her. Media chatter occasionally updated the public on Warren's incarceration. Rumors emerged that his home country negotiated behind the scenes for a spy swap. For now, he remained behind bars. Whether one day he'd be exchanged or live out decades in a maximum security prison, no one knew. Either way, his career as an infiltrator was finished. A cryptic news leak hinted that Warren's Operation Serpent had been more expansive, involving multiple Western nations. Some allied countries quietly arrested suspected moles around the same time. In that sense, Louis's uncovering of the infiltration had ripple effects across NATO intelligence. The synergy of heartbreak and duty had inadvertently saved multiple governments from infiltration. Months turned into a year. Louis gradually resumed a semblance of normalcy. He poured himself into new projects at the Pentagon, working on advanced cybersecurity solutions. His reputation quietly rose. Despite the scandal, higher-ups respected his unwavering sense of duty under unimaginable personal stress. He earned a discreet commendation from a Pentagon official for vigilance in the face of domestic compromise. Socially, he reconnected with old friends, occasionally accepting a dinner invitation but found relationships awkward. Many knew about Cecilia's betrayal. Some tiptoed around the topic. He decided to remain single for now, focusing on self-care and therapy to process the trauma. The memory of her face behind bars still haunted him, but the therapy sessions helped him realize he'd done what he had to do, for the nation's safety and his own integrity. Catherine eventually remarried, forging a new life far from the scandal. She remained in sporadic contact with Cecilia, who served her sentence quietly, rumored to be teaching other inmates basic language skills. In some letters, Cecilia reported a slow acceptance of her situation, expressing regret, hoping for early parole if she assisted fully with any leftover espionage leads. In a final stroke of closure, the CIA quietly updated Louis that a Galatea suspect was apprehended in a neighboring state, thanks partly to the decoy logs and the hints Cecilia provided. The infiltration ring was effectively dismantled. For Louis, it was a bittersweet victory. He realized that, ironically, Cecilia's partial cooperation contributed to that success. One crisp afternoon, he stood by the Potomac River, gazing at the water reflecting the pale autumn sky. His phone buzzed with a text from Stanley. "Galatea in custody. The op is done. Thanks for everything." Louis exhaled, a hint of relief. The personal cost had been staggering, but the national security breach was over. Twist 5. As he turned to leave, he paused, looking back at the water. He took from his pocket the wedding ring he'd worn for years. With a trembling sigh, he let it slip from his fingers into the gentle current. It sank beneath the ripples, a symbolic farewell to a life that ended the moment Cecilia chose betrayal. Though his heart still carried scars, he walked away, resolved to embrace a new chapter, free from the shadows of espionage and heartbreak. In the months and years ahead, Cecilia served her time, possibly eligible for parole around a decade in. No grand redemption lay in her path, but the knowledge that she'd contributed to capturing Galatea might offer her some sliver of solace. Warren remained an infamous figure in intelligence circles, rumored to be part of a potential spy swap, though no official arrangement materialized. Louis continued working in cybersecurity, occasionally collaborating with CIA counterparts. His personal life remained private, though he forged cautious new friendships and gradually found emotional healing. While the memory of Cecilia would never vanish, he learned to accept the tragedy, having played his role in safeguarding the nation from foreign infiltration. In the end, the revenge was not just personal, it was a grand, lawful exposure of treason, culminating in the downfall of the cheating wife and her foreign agent lover. The property was seized, reputations destroyed, prison sentences handed out. The foreign agent was trounced, and the national threat mostly neutralized. Though the heartbreak lingered, Louis emerged with integrity intact, forging a quiet but resolute future, proving that even in the darkest betrayals, steadfast devotion to duty and truth can shine a path forward.